First, BLM, they're blaming conservatives in wake of this transgender mass shooter in Philadelphia, claiming that he isn't transgender now, and they're blaming conservatives. They're trying to say that we're violent. So we've got that story here first on the Morning Buzz. Next, a federal judge blocks Joe Biden and his administration from coordinating with big tech to suppress content. This is a huge win for freedom of speech, right? This is huge. We have a federal judge blocking Joe Biden and his administration from working with big tech companies to try to censor you. They censor you. So that's big news, a big win for freedom of speech. Later, I do want to talk about a former Normal Town Council member who's taking some legal action against the municipality he once represented. And he's also taking legal action against this potential cannabis dispensary operator, High Haven, which is supposed to be operating out of this Mandarin Garden. It's actually right across the studio here from us. And I've got some tea there. I've got some details about that. 309-451-9299. You can always text into the Morning Buzz, or you can comment, like, share, love, be a part of the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. All right, so let's get into it here. 6 a.m. this morning, 6:07 a.m., a couple of days after Independence Day. I do want to start with BLM, them just basically blaming conservatives over this mass shooting in Philadelphia that occurred. It was on Monday. This mass shooting happened, and it quickly has left headlines. And I knew that. I told you yesterday that nobody was going to talk about this mass shooting, not the mainstream media, because why? The shooter is the culprit here is a cross-dressing Black Lives Matter activist. So quickly, these headlines, they were, shh, 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 don't talk about it. Shh, don't talk about it, because the guy who shot up all of these people, he's a cross-dresser, so that gives him a pass. Yeah, no, that's what the mainstream media thinks. The shooter was identified as Kim Brady Carricker. Kim Brady Carricker. Now, he's a biological male, and he shot into a crowd of people, killed 5 people, including a 15-year-old boy. Multiple other people were wounded, including a 2-year-old who was shot in the leg. A little baby 2-year-old was shot in the leg by this animal. Black Lives Matter, of course, they're now responding to the shooting, and the organization is blaming conservatives for perpetuating violence. That's what they're saying. They're saying that conservatives are perpetuating violence by posting pictures of this guy who shot into a crowd of people. And this guy happens to be wearing a bra, women's clothing, right? Further, one of these activists, these BLM activists who are blaming conservatives for perpetuating violence, he went so far as to hold a presser and claimed that this guy, the shooter, I don't even like saying his name. I really wish I wish we wouldn't say these people's names, because I think that just really lifts them up and gives them exactly what they want. So the shooter, he claimed that this shooter is not actually transgender. Folks, this may be the fastest detransition in history. Okay, detransitioning, actually, it takes a very long time. I've talked before. He was featured in What is a Woman by Matt Walsh. I've talked with him at length before. His name is Scott Nugent, and he's talked with me about detransitioning. It takes a very long time. Turns out that this is probably one of the fastest detransitions in history. They're saying, conveniently, right, that he is not transgender. At a press conference about the mass shooting in Philadelphia, the BLM activist said that conservative media is committing verbal violence by sharing photos of the shooter in women's clothing because he was not really trans. Nice. So let's take a listen to this BLM activist who held a presser and is more concerned about the shooter and how he feels than Oh, I don't know, the actual families who are grieving who lost somebody that day in this mass shooting that happened in Philadelphia. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Spewed by the conservative press regarding the shooter. There are certain pictures that are circulating. Some of you may be aware of those pictures. Have the shooter in one picture as male and other pictures dressed in female attire or female outfits. They have used those pictures to attack trans people, and particularly trans women of color, which are extremely vulnerable to violence in our community. I want to set the record straight because language is extremely important when we're talking about anything dealing with violence in trans community. The suspect or the shooter has not identified themselves as trans. They have only identified themselves as male. And that's the language that will be used until further developments if they change that type of language. But the language that is spewed out by the conservative press is violent and is dangerous and is targeting trans women of color. It's routing the community to be violent. And we're better than that. We're better than that. We have our trans women and our trans men living in these communities.
This guy is more concerned about an animal. I mean, he shot 5 people, folks. He shot a baby in the leg, and this BLM activist is more concerned about using the proper pronouns when referring to this shooter. And I'm sorry, but the shooter's birth name most certainly is not Kim Brady, okay? That's the kind of name you'd expect from somebody who transitions. Further, he's clearly cross-dressing in all of these photographs, and he posted it. And the way he's cross-dressing, this is evidence that he's identifying as transgender, and the way he's doing it, he's clearly not some sort of performer. This wasn't a one-off. He's a transgender person. To be frank, I don't feel much pressure to respect whatever nuances are being proposed here by this BLM activist whom you just heard. I really don't feel that much pressure to respect this person, this mass shooter who dresses like a woman and goes by a feminized name. Call that what you will, but it seems highly probable that this guy, this shooter, was just suffering from the same mental delusions the transgender shooter in Nashville suffered from. And there's a real conversation to be had here. Despite making up a very tiny fraction of the population, there's numerous transgender mass shooters over the last several years. Almost without fail, the press, the activists, they come out and then they try to try to claim later that they're not actually transgender. That's just too convenient, in my opinion. There is no violence being perpetuated by just taking note that this guy is a transgender and who cross-dressed and was a BLM activist. There is nothing wrong with noting that. There's no violence in that. The violence was committed when this guy decided to go out and kill 5 people and wound several others. Maybe that should be your focus there, Mr. BLM activist. This isn't about conservatives. It's about what the far left preaches. And it's about their violent rhetoric. And likely that violent rhetoric was a result, um, what resulted in this guy going and shooting up these 5 people. When you're constantly telling trans identifying people that they're being genocide by white supremacists, eventually somebody is going to take action. Do want to shift gears here on the morning buzz. There is a massive win we should be celebrating today. A federal judge, whoop, whoop, blocking the Biden administration from coordinating with big tech companies to block or suppress content. This is huge. The injunction comes from a lawsuit brought by the Missouri and Louisiana attorney generals claiming that the White House went too far in coordinating with big tech companies to try to censor content about the scandemic and about the 2020 scheme election. The scheme election. The scam, it was a scam, the pandemic, and it was a scheme and a plot, the 2020 election. In his ruling, this federal judge, he goes by the name Terry Doughty, and he says that the plaintiffs have a strong likelihood of proving that the U.S. government suppressed dissent. Hmm. And he's ordered the Biden administration, he said, nope, you guys can't do this. Federal agencies, nope, nope, nope. You guys cannot talk with big tech companies anymore. And he said, you need to cease communication with these big tech companies. That's what the federal judge said. This is a win. This is huge. Opposition to COVID-19 vaccines, opposition to COVID-19 masking and lockdowns, opposition to the lab leak theory of COVID-19, opposition to the validity of the 2020 election, opposition to Joe Biden's policies, statements that Hunter Biden's laptop story was actually true, and that it was real, the opposition to policies of the government officials in power. We were all suppressed. All of it was suppressed. Any kind of opposition you have with the government, they wanted to suppress that opposition. I like to play a game. This is the game I like to play. I'm like, okay, now this story comes out. The federal judge says, no, you cannot talk with big tech companies and try to censor people. I like to play this game. How is this going to be framed by our corporate journalismers, our mainstream media folks? How is this going to be framed by them, who support, of course, Joe Biden and his administration suppressing viewpoints? They love it. Corporate media, same thing. Government, same thing. This is how they do it. Let's take a listen here. This is how the mainstream media is reporting this story about this federal judge blocking Joe Biden from censoring and coordinating with big tech companies to censor or block content. Here we go. The Donald Trump appointed judge the judge's move could undo years of efforts to enhance coordination between the government and social media companies. That's how they're reporting this. They're like, oh, this is just efforts by the government and social media companies, and this is enhancing coordination between the two. It's like, my God, are you serious right now? That's how the mainstream is reporting this, as if this is a bad thing, that our federal government shouldn't be coordinating with big tech to censor stories. It's hard for the Biden administration to deny that they are doing this and that they have been censoring people, because they brag about it from the White House podium. I've got my receipts here. I've got to take a quick break, but I've got my receipts. Jen Psaki, she's up there calling on Spotify and these big tech companies to censor Joe Rogan. She literally says this from the White House podium. Then we've got Joe Biden out there, and he's begging, he's on his hands and knees, begging the big tech companies and big media to censor what Biden has claimed to be misinformation or disinformation. So I've got all of that and more ahead here on the Morning Buzz. It is a big win. It is a big win. This federal judge blocking Joe Biden from working with big tech to censor news stories. Also, a little bit later, I've got this story. KJP, Karen Jean-Pierre, the Black lesbian White House press secretary, she gives this terrible response about Joe Biden and his refusal to acknowledge Hunter Biden's love child from a stripper whom he had with a stripper. And Joe Biden refuses to acknowledge her as his granddaughter. This guy is sick. He's a scumbag. We're going to talk about it here next. Hey, if you're watching, go ahead, smash that like button. If you're watching right now, smash it right now. Share this out with your friends. You can like, love. You can even do a wow face or a laughing face whenever you have the chance. Please interact with the video. Subscribe if you're listening right now. Subscribe to the channel. That's a big help to me. Gaslighting and brainwashing, and he's not very good at it. Yes. gaslighting and brainwashing. He's not very good at it. That's Joe Biden. They're trying to gaslight you and they're trying to brainwash you, the mainstream media, into thinking that this federal judge blocking uh, the big tech companies from coordinating with the White House is a bad thing. This is not a bad thing. This is a good thing. I can't believe, I'm just going to throw it into the comments here, how the mainstream media is reporting this. They're trying to say a Donald Trump appointed federal judge, as if this is like Donald Trump's doing. No, a federal judge is going to operate on the basis of, hey, is this legal or not? Is this legal? That's what this federal judge is doing. And these corporate journalismers, they're trying to say that this is going to undo years of coordination, and as if this coordination with big tech companies and the government is a good thing. No, media and government should be totally separate. And I always have this position. This is how the mainstream is reporting this. Read this here. The Donald Trump appointed judges move could undo years of efforts to enhance coordination between the government and social media companies. Do you see the bias here? Do you see what they're trying to do? They're trying to frame this as if it's a bad thing that we have this judge siding with and ruling with the people and saying, hey, you can't censor individuals anymore. The mainstream media is the fourth branch of government, and they think that they can just censor you because they can. We are going to be talking a little bit about Joe Biden and his grandbaby that he refuses to acknowledge. And I hate playing this game, but I'm going to do it anyway. If this was Eric Trump, I don't think I need to tell you what would happen. Okay. If this were Eric Trump, they would be up in arms. The media would be up in arms. And if Donald Trump had denied his granddaughter's existence and Eric Trump had tried to fight to prevent that daughter from having his last name, we all know what would be said about Donald Trump. We all know it, or any other Republican for that matter. Um, we all know what would happen in that instance, right? But it's not happening with Joe Biden because the lapdogs, the media lapdogs. Um, Interesting story. I think this is incredible. And I've said it from the beginning that Vivek Ramaswamy is my guy. If Donald Trump were not to be um, the 2024 GOP nominee, my guy would be Vivek Ramaswamy. And you're like, Kat, but wait, Ron DeSantis. I understand. I understand that you love Ron DeSantis. That's fine. However, there are some things that Ron DeSantis is currently doing in Florida as a governor that raises my eyebrows. For example, he made it illegal or he made it very hard for you to go after insurance companies. So there was a huge hurricane and people had issues with their insurance companies, and there were lawsuits that people were filing against their insurance companies because they were giving them pennies for their claims, right? They weren't giving them large enough claims and what they were entitled to for paying into insurance, right? So the people were going after the insurance companies. But guess who created legislation that makes it impossible for you to go after these insurance companies in that way? Ron DeSantis. There's a lot of things that we don't know about Ron DeSantis, and there's some things he's doing in his state. Um, and I would like to see somebody like an outsider get in. Somebody who won't be beholden to politics, won't be beholden to career politicians. That's what was so fascinating about Donald Trump in 2016 was that he was some sort of businessman and entrepreneur. And Vivek Ramaswamy has that. He's not coming from a place of politics. He's an entrepreneur like Donald Trump was. And Vivek Ramaswamy, I'll remind you, showed up in Florida in that southern district where Trump was being indicted, and he called on all of the other primary candidates in that GOP. It's a crowded GOP race right now. For the primary for the presidency, he called on all of these candidates and he said, hey, you guys need to stand up and speak out for Donald Trump. You guys need to come out and say that you're going to pardon him if he were to be indicted, convicted, and he showed up to his arraignment. He was the only one who wound up showing up to his arraignment, Vivek Ramaswamy. And Vivek Ramaswamy now is trailing Ron DeSantis for the GOP nomination by just 6%. So Ramaswamy gained support among Republican voters after he was the only presidential candidate to show vocal support for Donald Trump when he was criminally indicted. So this should not shock anyone. He's a entrepreneur. I want somebody who's an outsider to come into this race and to win. Donald Trump is still that outsider, despite being a president for 4 years. He is definitely not beholden. And in fact, I think that we're going to see some sort of revenge Trump come back and just dismantle everything. And I hope that that happens where we get rid of the FBI, the Department of Education, all of it. We're back. Well, this is very exciting news for me. Maybe not for you because you might be a Ron DeSantis guy, and that's totally cool. No hard feelings. But Vivek Ramaswamy is gaining ground in the Republican primary election, the presidential primary election, that is. Vivek Ramaswamy, in a recent poll, shows him breaking into double digit numbers as he gets closer and closer to Ron DeSantis for second place, right behind President Donald Trump. Now, come on, folks. We've got to look at the polling. And before you say, "Cat, I don't believe the polls." Yes, you do. You believe it to an extent, right? I'm not saying Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump polls, right? I'm saying let's look at these polls, right? You wouldn't say that and a logical person would not come out here and say that Mike Pence is going to be the Republican nominee. He does not have the support, right? Yeah, so to an extent, you believe in the polls just as much as everybody else does. And I think that polls serve a purpose. Maybe when they get closer, they're not as accurate because you can sway things for for one political candidate over the other. Now, Ron DeSantis, I mean, we're looking at 6% more. By just 6%, Vivek Ramaswamy is trailing Ron DeSantis. And this comes after Ramaswamy gained support among Republican voters after he was the only presidential candidate to come out and show vocal support for Donald Trump when he was criminally indicted. So he actually shows up. Vivek Ramaswamy shows up to where Donald Trump was going to be arraigned. And he shows up for the guy, unlike any other candidate in this Republican presidential primary. I mean, and not to mention, he's an outsider. He's a tech entrepreneur. Ron DeSantis is a politician and has done things in Florida that I'm not a fan of. He's taken money from insurance companies and he's actually signed off on legislation that makes it difficult for people to sue insurance companies. He did this after a devastating hurricane. Okay, so there's things about Ron DeSantis and the way he's running Florida that you don't see. He says all of the right things, folks, and that's great. But I want an outsider, and I think that Vivek Ramaswamy would make a great VP. And I think he would make a great president, to be frank with you. I don't think that's going to happen because I'm a realist. Donald Trump is definitely going to run away with this. But Vivek Ramaswamy is now trailing Ron DeSantis, and he's breaking double digits here. Uh, he's trailing Ron DeSantis by 6%. So he is pretty dang close as the second uh, runner up there. He's getting close. I do want to talk about the receipts. So before we took the break, I was talking about the Biden administration, Joe Biden being blocked by this federal judge and saying, "Hey, you guys cannot censor individuals. You guys cannot coordinate with each other. You need to cease your communication with big tech companies, Biden administration, because what you're doing here is you're censoring individuals." So I've got the receipts. People are going to sit there and they're going to say, "Kat, the Biden administration wasn't censoring individuals. What do you mean?" First of all. Second of all, here's the receipts. Jen Psaki, here she is from the White House podium talking about how she wants Joe Rogan censored. She just straight up says it, folks. The quiet part out loud. She says that she wants Joe Rogan to be censored. Let's take a listen to Jen Psaki's exact words here when she urges big tech to censor uh, Joe Rogan. Here we go. Let's take a listen to this. I think that this is going to play. I don't think it's planned. Okay, so she literally from the White House podium says that more can be done when it comes to taking action against Joe Rogan for spreading disinformation. So that was what Jen Psaki had said from the White House podium. Y'all are just going to have to believe me. I don't know why it's not playing. But then Joe Biden, he gets out there and he begs big tech to censor um, what he calls misinformation and disinformation. So these people are being very, very loud about their censorship from the White House podium. Here's Joe Biden. So there he says he's laying the groundwork for the misinformation, disinformation, and that you need to get vaccinated. Let's pick this up. Here we go. If it plays. I don't think that that's going to play, but he says that there's a new wave of medical teams and they are dedicated to stopping the spread of misinformation and disinformation. So he gets up there on the podium and he deems things misinformation. And this goes well beyond public health crisis and faith in our elections. Okay. What they deem misinformation goes well beyond public health crisis and faith in our elections. Facebook started censoring conservative elected officials who criticized Joe Biden's student loan bailout. So this wasn't just about the election. This wasn't just about COVID, but it's about criticizing Joe Biden and his policies. And we have information here. The Intercept, they did a this report, it's explosive. In 2022, Facebook created this portal so government officials could request posts be censored. So you as a government official put yourself in their shoes right now. You as a government official, you log into the portal and you see something about Hunter Biden smoking crack cocaine, and you see a meme or something that suggests that Hunter Biden smokes crack cocaine. You take that meme and you throw it into the portal and you say, hey, let's flag this. And they deem that disinformation. And then all of a sudden, and I'm sure what is, merely ironic coincidence, the website saw traffic to any post making fun of Joe Biden get throttled, or Hunter Biden, right? So all of a sudden, you started to see that meme on Facebook be throttled, and there's no likes on it, nobody's seeing it, and it gets pushed down to the bottom of feeds. That's called censorship. That's called shadow banning. And when I say this is a big win for this federal judge to block and to say, hey, Joe Biden and your administration, you cannot be coordinating with big tech companies to censor individuals. This is a single big win in a much longer war, because I guarantee, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see this case go all the way up to the Supreme Court. 309-451-9299. I've got to take a quick break, but I'll be back. A Normal Town Council member, a former Normal Town Council member, is taking legal action against the town of Normal, which he formerly represented at a time, and he's taking legal action against a potential cannabis dispensary. Now, Jeff Fritzen, he filed a lawsuit against Normal and High Haven Dispensary on June 12th. So the case is subsequently assigned to the McLean County Circuit Court judge. Her name is Rebecca Foley. And there has been no court date set as of this moment, but this suit follows the approval of this special use permit that would allow this High Haven Cannabis Company to take up residency in the Mandarin Garden restaurant here, right across from the studio. It's called Shops at College Hill. That's where this area is at, and they want to turn it into a dispensary. And this guy, Jeff Fritzen, argues that the town was legally required to wait a year before deciding to approve this. So I've got more on that. Tom Davis and Kevin Woodard, they've got more on this news story here after the break. Hey, if you're watching right now, go ahead, smash that like button. I know you won't do it because you're afraid that leftists are going to see that you like videos like this. So, no, just smash the like button right now. It really helps me out. You can like, love, share, and comment. Now, let's get to Jacqueline's comment. Be a part of the show. Censorship is fascism. This administration and Biden are fascists. Yes, this is a big win, but look, this is a single win in a much larger war. Uh, I think that this is going to go up to the Supreme Court. I wouldn't doubt it because this big tech censorship is something that they cannot lose. This is losing the fourth branch of government. This is losing their little media acolytes. And if they lose their media acolytes, then everything starts to crumble because they lose the information. We are in information wars right now. We've got conservative news and then we've got mainstream news. Okay, so that's what people typically consume on cable news, on cable TV, or in the newspaper or something like that. That's mainstream. Then you have shows like this one. You have publications like this one, and that's what you would call conservative news, or I don't even know if it would be conservative news, more or less, news that is adversarial to government. What happens, and I'll just kind of give you some inside baseball, just because I've gone through the degree and I understand how this works. What government tends to do, and they do it with um, the big guys at the top level. We saw this Fox News, BlackRock. BlackRock owns Fox News, at least a portion of it. So, what will happen is advertisers or people who invest in your company, they will just invest enough to where you don't want to lose that money. So they'll invest enough money, government, the town of Normal or the state of Illinois will invest enough money into different news publications or different conglomerates, news conglomerates. There's an ABC affiliate. I mean, you could get into all of it, right? There's all kinds of different news conglomerates, and these conglomerates own all kinds of different stations. So, uh, what happens is the government, whether that be the town of Normal, whether that be the state of Illinois, they just put a tiny bit of money into these stations. And because it's entertainment based and because it's not subscriber or anything like that, and people consume news for free nowadays, they don't want to pay for the news. They don't want to pay for the entertainment. You don't want to pay for this show. I wouldn't ask you to pay for that for this show, right? But um, the news companies cannot afford to not have that money, to not have the government money and the company money, the BlackRock money. So they bend the knee on content, they bend the knee on a lot of things, and they don't speak out. They don't cover things fairly because of who they're beholden to. This happens at a very local level. It's not just Fox News, it's everybody. They are beholden to advertisers, they are beholden to government who wants to advertise. Okay, so that is what goes on. I'm just going to be real with you but the reason why we don't ask for subscriptions and things like that is because that just won't work. What needs to start happening is you, the business owner and the consumer of content of conservative media, you need to encourage business owners to not bend the knee and to advertise and to be willing to say, "Hey, I'm a conservative. Hey, I'm a Christian, and I advertise on this program because I think that it works." Speaking of which, we are going to get into the Bud Light thing because whoever is in charge of their marketing at this point, I call them the spaghetti group because this is what they're doing. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall and they're hoping that it sticks. That's what Bud Light is doing right now because they just came out with this new ad and I'm like scratching my head and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like who is coming up with this stuff?" The new ad tries to play on this fratty out of touch humor that I think that Alyssa was alluding to, and they get this, tight end from Kansas City football team or whatever to sit down in this commercial and to not drink the beer because he's not allowed to drink the beer, folks. So we're going to be talking about that. If you're watching right now, smash the like button. If you had a grandbaby, would you deny this grandbaby's existence if this grandbaby was birthed from a former stripper? So Kieran Jean-Pierre, she gets up there and she gives this terrible response to Joe Biden's refusal to acknowledge Hunter Biden's love child with this stripper. And Joe Biden refuses to acknowledge this little love child, this is not her fault, right? This is not her fault. It's not her fault that Hunter decided to be with a stripper and to have a baby with this stripper. It's not this baby's fault. And it's sad that we have a president, the United States president, who refuses to acknowledge this little girl and to acknowledge this little girl as his granddaughter. So we are going to be talking about that plus Bud Light. Ooh, they're attempting they have a very desperate attempt out there to return to the fratty humor with this new Super Bowl champion who's not allowed to drink the beer. So they create this ad and they think that they're going to return to this fratty humor and get their customers back. I'm sorry, Bud Light, but you had a chance to get your customers back. All you had to do was say, I'm sorry, we messed up. We shouldn't have hired Dylan Mulvaney. Right? That's all you had to do. But now they're trying to throw spaghetti at a wall and they're going to try to see what sticks. And I've got the commercial here for you. Later, President Donald Trump offered his view on a bag of cocaine found in the West Wing of the White House, saying it's more than likely that the Secret Service, they already know the identity of the person who was in possession of this substance and left the substance behind. So Donald Trump on Truth Social, I mean, I was rolling in laughter today. I was on the floor rolling around laughing at these Truth Social posts from Donald Trump in regards to the cocaine that was found in the White House. So Joe Biden, he's very fond of saying these are all of our children. They'll say that a lot. They'll say they're not your children, they're all of our children. Usually this is in the context, of course, of letting them chop off their genitals or letting them get indoctrinated by teachers unions and teacher union members and teachers. Right, that's usually in the context of when he says, "These are all our children. These are all our children." Uh, but there is one child that Joe Biden refuses to acknowledge. The 4-year-old Arkansas girl. She's 4 years old, and her mom is a former stripper, and her dad is a deadbeat and a cocaine addict, and Joe Biden is her grandpa. So President Biden refuses to acknowledge this girl's existence, even as Hunter Biden, her dad, is, partying in public more at the White House with his other kids. So he's got more kids. And what's really sad is that you start to see Hunter Biden and he interacts with other kids and, you know, um, the other grandchildren, right? Joe Biden interacts with them. And you start to see this at the White House and you're like, well, this is sad. And Kieran Jean-Pierre, she was finally asked about it. She was asked about Joe Biden's refusal to acknowledge the girl's existence. And why does he acknowledge this little, or doesn't acknowledge this little girl, but he acknowledges all of his other grandchildren? Biden's worst diversity hire. This is the black lesbian, Kieran Jean-Pierre, the worst diversity hire ever. And that's saying something, folks, because Sam Brinton is the guy who stole women's luggages from airports. I think that she's the worst diversity hire we've got out there. And that's saying something. She refuses to answer, and then she changes the topic really quick. If you're watching on the live stream, you can see Kieran Jean-Pierre and how she quickly tries to get away from this topic because she doesn't want to answer. And if you're watching on the live stream, you can text in, you can comment, you can share the video. That helps us out a lot, folks. So let's take a listen to the diversity hire, Kieran Jean-Pierre, at the White House podium.
There was a story in the New York Times over the weekend about Hunter Biden's daughter in Arkansas. Does the president acknowledge this little girl as his granddaughter?
I don't have anything to share from here.
There you have it, folks. I don't have anything to share from here. That's what Kieran Jean-Pierre says. And you're probably wondering, why is this news now? We've known for quite some time that Hunter Biden has gone to great lengths to try to get this little girl to not have his name. The reason this is news now is because of a recent New York Times article about money eroding politics and what it means to have, and these are their words here in the New York Times article, the Biden birthright. So the New York Times, they told the tale of this little girl who loves playing with her cousins. She's learning how to ride a bike, and one day she wants to learn how to hunt like her mom. So apparently the stripper mom is a hunter. Then came the most heartbreaking sentences out of this New York Times article, and I'm just going to share this article with you. I think this is the most heartbreaking thing I've read in politics so far. Um, Here we go. The girl is aware that her father is Hunter Biden and that her paternal grandfather is the president of the United States. She speaks about both of them often, and she has not met them. This is the granddaughter who Hunter Biden fought to prevent using the Biden last name. He and his baby mama settled the matter, and the girl will go by her mother's last name. So we had Hunter Biden fighting to make sure that this little girl did not have his last name. The New York Times made it a point to report that there is no evidence that the White House is involved in those actions. So the White House was not involved in trying to prevent her from having the Biden last name. That was all Hunter Biden's doing. And I hate to play this game, but I'm going to play it anyway. Um, Imagine if this was Eric Trump. Imagine if Eric Trump, who had a love child with a stripper, and we had Donald Trump out there denying that the granddaughter even existed. And we had Eric Trump fighting to prevent that daughter from having his last name. We all know what would be said about Donald Trump. We all know it. Or any other Republican for that matter in this instance, right? Joe Biden is a scumbag. He's a scumbag. Coming up, I do have to take a break. You guys can see me live in the studio for exclusive streaming content on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm there. I've got exclusive content on the other side. Bud Light appears to have signed some sort of deal with spaghetti flying people. Like their marketing team is a bunch of dudes in a room, and they're throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to see what sticks. There's this new commercial out there, and it's deeply offensive. The former number one beer in America. This is their latest attempt in trying to uh, make amends with their customers. This is next. Wow. All right, coming up at 7 o'clock on the live stream, we're going to be watching Hunter Biden. There's this video that is just blown up on Twitter. There's no sound to the video. It's just Hunter Biden doing what Hunter Biden does. And I've got a question for you on the live stream coming up at 7 o'clock. What's going on with Hunter Biden? What kind of drugs is this guy on? This video is shocking. I don't know what kind of drugs he took, but something's not right here. We're going to be talking about that 7 o'clock on the live stream, YouTube and on Facebook. But right now, I've got this. It's a nice news story. I like doing these a lot of the time for your Thursday, for your Fridays. I like doing some nice news story. The world is crazy, and it's good to sit back and just look at the good in the world sometimes. So there's this Connecticut guy, and he's very lucky to be alive. And it's all because of two heroic men, one who is a very good swimmer, and the other one who knows CPR. So the Stamford Police Department, Connecticut, says Carlos and Luis were on the beach late on Monday night when this guy noticed about 20 yards away. So Manuel was the guy who noticed about 20 yards away that someone was in the water struggling to swim. So we had Luis then take off his clothes and dive into the water. Then the man was unconscious underwater, the man who was struggling to swim. And then we had Luis grab him and pull him to shore. So Luis, Carlos, they saw this happening. Then we have Carlos, who helped him pull out of the water, helped Luis pull him out of the water immediately and started performing CPR. After about a minute, the man coughed up some water and was able to breathe on his own. He was rushed to a nearby hospital and is in the ICU, but is expected to be okay. The police department shared this story on Facebook, and congratulations to these heroes. I like this story because it reminds me of something my mom used to tell me all the time when I was little. If you see something, say something. If something doesn't sit right with you, you have to be convicted enough to go out and act and to do something. If something doesn't feel right, you have to do something to fix it. Uh, so I like that news story. These people, they could have just walked by. They could have chalked it up to, oh, maybe that guy is, you know, just having fun. Maybe, but they saw something. They knew it wasn't right. They felt something and they were convicted to go help him. These are true heroes. The true heroes here are these two men, Carlos and Luis. So, another news story I've got here for you. A former music teacher honored by the British government. So, 83-year-old Paul Harvey of East Sussex, England, is a former music teacher who currently is dealing with dementia. So, he's 83 years old. He's a former music teacher. In 2020, he created a song that shot to the top of the music charts as a charity single. So he ended up raising nearly like $2 million for dementia services. So he created a song, it boosted up into the charts, and he raised a bunch of money. That effort and all of the money raised didn't go unnoticed by the British government. So this is pretty cool. We've got Paul here. He's 83 years old, being honored and made a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire in the King's birthday honors. So this was pretty cool. The honor is a huge deal in England, I guess. I don't know. It's silly people. It's silly people. They do these things still where they like honor people, and uh, but I think that this is really cool. That Paul, he came out actually and said that he was over the moon about the whole adventure. That was a quote from him. And Paul's son, he's got a son. His name is Nick, and he says that his dad still can't quite believe what happened, but he's deeply honored. And he couldn't happen. It couldn't happen to a nicer man. It's incredible what he's achieved. That's what Nick, his son, said. So something to warm your heart. He is a dementia patient, and he's dealing with dementia. And here he is being honored by the British government. Some good for your Thursday here. It's 6:57 a.m. On the other side, what are we going to be talking about? Well, I didn't get into this. Kieran Jean-Pierre, the response to Joe Biden's refusal to acknowledge Hunter Biden's love child with a stripper and his granddaughter. So Hunter has been at the White House in the last couple of days. I got to Carol Jean-Pierre and her terrible response, but what I didn't get to was the bag of cocaine that we found here at the West Wing of the White House and Donald Trump's response to it on Truth Social, which is going to have you laughing. Plus, Bud Light is attempting to uh, return to fratty humor as this VP of marketing sales. She said that Bud Light customers have a fratty sense of humor. So what Bud Light is trying to do, they're trying to throw things at a wall, see if it sticks. And what they really should be doing is just coming out and apologizing. But it's a little too late for that now, I think. You can't just come out and apologize for what you've done at this point because you've gone a million different directions. And all of this pain, the suffering, the closing of these two bottling companies or centers could have been avoided if you would have just apologized. Good morning, friends. Hey, you're listening to the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. And like I said, we are going to be looking at this clip that is blowing up. It is blowing up on social media. Now, the thing about this is that I can't bring this onto air because there is no audio. But you will see the video, and the video is damning of Hunter Biden. So I don't know. This man has got to be on heavy drugs. He's in front of children here. You tell me what's wrong with Hunter in this clip. Here we go. Let's share this with you. Okay, here we go. So here's Hunter. What what is what ooh. Let's just keep watching it. Throw into the comments here, what do you think Hunter Biden's on? It is the best. I do love Donald Trump's response here. We are going to get into the response for the cocaine on Twitter. I'm going to try to do my best Donald Trump impersonation. Wrong, Hillary. But yeah, what's going on with Hunter here? I think it's cocaine. And like, look at this little girl, just absolutely terrorized. This guy should not be around children. I mean, he is coked out. That is something a coked out person would do. Um, and that video itself is trending on Twitter. I mean, it's big on Twitter right now. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you. What do you guys think? And if you guys aren't following us on Twitter, you can follow us on Twitter. You can also subscribe to the channel. If you're watching right now, smash the like button. You won't do it. You won't do it because you're afraid your boss is going to see that you like this program. It's okay. I understand. Just do it anyway. Do it anyway. Say a big flip the bird to your boss and say, you know what? I'm going to like the show anyway. So like the channel. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is not only President Donald Trump's response, but I do to the cocaine, but I do want to also talk about the normal town council member who's taking legal action against the municipality. He once represented, so he's taking action against both the cannabis dispensary. It's called High Haven, and he's filed suit against Normal and this High Haven cannabis dispensary. The case has been assigned here to the McLean County Circuit Judge Rebecca Foley. Now, I haven't seen a court date, but we'll have to see what goes on here. Uh, I was watching or I was reading from BLN News today. Jeff Fritzen. Now, he's not a friend of the right? Okay, so he has um, sided with the town of Normal against citizens in the past. So I think he would have gotten a lot more support in this lawsuit. He might get a lot more support had he not sided with the town of Normal against the citizens. So there was a huge news story here locally about how the town of Normal was actively trying to keep people off of the ballot, despite there being municipal code saying that citizens were entitled to get representation under this code. So if you haven't heard, JB Pritzker, he signed this new legislation making Normal the only incorporated town that doesn't have to follow existing law. So there's an existing law in the books where if you're an incorporated town over 25,000 people, then you have to have certain offices. You have to have certain people fill those offices. clerk, town clerk, an assessor, collector. These different things have to be elected offices in this municipality. Um, but not anymore because there was a law that was drafted in response, really, to people saying that, hey, we want to be elected representatives on the ballot here, because the municipal code that the state lays out says that we should have this representation. So the law that was drafted by, of course, Sharon Chung. Now, like if you know what I'm talking about, like if you have been keeping up with this story, or throw into the comments if you say, yes, Kat, I know what you're saying, if you've been following this story. So Sharon Chung, she made this law. And really what this law does, it proves that the citizens of Normal were right, and that we should have had representation uh, laid out for us in that municipal code. But of course, your elected officials are nothing more than yes votes for whatever the town of Normal wants. And the town of Normal, of course, did not want you to have more representation on that ballot, even though the Illinois municipal code at the time afforded us to. Now, there's a law that Sharon Chung break a law, change a law, right? That's what they did. So the law here proves that Democrats don't believe in voting rights. They don't believe in a democracy. They don't believe in the rights of citizens to have direct representation. Electing trustees at large means that no one has representation. So it's illegal to make a law that only applies to one entity in the first place. So there's something called equal protection under the law. And this law that's currently in the books that, you know, makes Normal the exception to this municipal code law that's laid out, uh, I frankly don't think it's legal. It's called equal protect. You can't like make laws at the state level for certain counties and certain municipalities. That's wild. But whatever, it's whatever the town of Normal wants. Democrats, they believe in I'm doing it, sue me. Why do they believe in that? Because they have the money. So I am going to get into this lawsuit Jeff Fritzen has. Perhaps he would have had more support had he not been, um, you know, siding with the town of Normal against citizens who wanted representation. Um, so I don't know what his motives here are, Jeff Fritzen, with this whole thing, but my prediction on this one, if it ever goes to court, Judge Foley will probably tell Fritzen that the town of Normal is a home rule uh, town, and they can do whatever they want, because that's what happened this last go around with the municipal code thing. I love interacting with you on the live stream, 309-451-9299. You can also interact with me via text message. If you just text in the 8 o'clock hour, we are going to be visiting with John Weatherby. He's our meteorologist. I was talking with him a lot yesterday about the Canadian wildfires. So, that week, I think it's pretty much subsided now. But there's still kind of a smell in the air. I don't know about you. What do you think? Is there still kind of a smell in the air, a hue from the Canadian wildfires? And I've been scratching my head at these jet streams that meteorologists have been trying to explain of how this smoke has come down into the state of Illinois. So I'm going to try to talk with him about the jet streams, John Weatherby. Plus, there have been some severe weather uh, incidences. I was actually in Lincoln, Illinois, got hit really hard last week with all of the storms. There was all kinds of power lines down right there when you get off on 55, and there was a semi truck trailer flipped over there by the Eaton facility. There was trees down. It was devastating, and Springfield got even hit harder. From what I could see in the pictures, there was a dumpster truck. I'll never forget it. There was a dump truck, or like a big trash can, right? A huge garbage can. And it crashed into one of these downtown buildings and just left this big old gaping hole in downtown Springfield. And I was just like, my jaw dropped. I was like, what? So we're going to be talking to John Weatherby in the 8 o'clock hour. What am I talking about this hour? Well, before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about Donald Trump. I have a comment here on the Facebook Live. Trump's response to the cocaine found at the White House was the best ever and the funniest. Twitter went off on it and it triggered so many people. I was rolling on the floor laughing this morning reading Donald Trump's response. So, we are going to talk about President Donald Trump offering his view on a bag of cocaine that was found in the West Wing of the White House. And he says that it's way more likely that the Secret Service, they probably already know the identity of the individual who was in possession of this substance on the White House grounds in the West Wing. So we're going to be talking about that. Plus, Bud Light, they are attempting a desperate return to fratty humor with this Super Bowl champion who's not allowed to drink beer. And they create this commercial to try to pander to you. And it's really quite offensive. So we're going to talk about that. Let's get into it. Let's start with Bud Light. I'm going to start with Bud Light, and then we're going to get into Donald Trump and Truth Social. So here we have Bud Light, and they have appeared to sign something I call an agreement with spaghetti throwing marketers, because this is the way I think Bud Light is handling their marketing nowadays. They've got a bunch of guys in one room and they say, here's a bowl of spaghetti, just throw it at the wall. Here's a couple of doobies, smoke some weed, get high, and just start throwing spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks. And while you're doing that, just get high and try to think of some ways we can avoid apologizing to our now former customers. So, what was once the former number one beer in America, this is their latest attempt now to avoid apologizing and to pander to their former customers. They dug out Kansas City Chief tight end. His name is Travis Kelce. I didn't know who this is really. I didn't recognize him when I saw the commercial. But then I started to look at him in his uniform and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I think I know who this is. He's the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's a Super Bowl champion. Okay, so star athlete. And I'm just going to play the commercial for you. There's not much audio here that goes with it. So let's just take a listen and I'll explain the visual here. And as always, I'm on YouTube, Facebook. You can always see the visuals there.
Oh. Yeah.
All right, so it says easy to drink, and they've got a bunch of men grunting and groaning there. So to illustrate how cool and refreshing Bud Light is, they hired this athlete who can't drink beer. Not that he's, on the wagon or anything, but I just know this. NFL players, per their union contract, they're not allowed to appear in commercials or advertisements drinking beer directly endorsing a beer. So they can't drink on camera. That's just part of their union contract, NFL players, and that is what Travis Kelce is here. He's an NFL player, so he can't even drink the beer, which is kind of funny in the commercial, right? So let's be honest. How many people outside of Kansas City recognize Kelce when he isn't in uniform? That's one. I mean, I watched the commercial and I was like, who is that guy? I was like, I don't know who that guy is. And I was like, maybe it's just because I'm a woman and I don't understand. But I don't think a lot of us would recognize who Travis Kelce is if he's not in uniform. So he's out of uniform and he's like kicking back and he's groaning. And look, the bigger problem goes back to something I keep saying. It's not so much that they hired Dylan Mulvaney, the TikToker, the performer who thinks that he's a young girl, which is really creepy. And he sings about his bulge in his pants and he wears leather lady shorts, right? That in itself is like an easy target and we can understand, that's a big problem. However, what I think the bigger problem is that when Bud Light started to collapse because they hired this TikTok performer, Dylan Mulvaney, this disgraced former vice president, Alyssa, that's her name, Alyssa, she got out there and she said that people who drink Anheuser-Busch products, here's the quote: Bud Light has been kind of fratty. They're kind of out of touch humor, and it's really important we had another approach. That's what Alyssa said about customers. She called you, if you drank Bud Light formerly, fratty, And she said that you had out of touch humor. She knows nothing about you. She just has this idea about you in her head, and she has no clue of what you've been through. Okay. And she says that you're fratty and out of touch. That I think is the bigger problem than Dylan Mulvaney, to be honest with you. Um, so that another approach didn't work. Hiring Dylan Mulvaney didn't work. And so they have to go back to their fratty out of touch humor. And now that fratty out of touch humor comes across as cheap pandering as this commercial does. And I mean, here they have a bunch of guys, right? And they're kicking back and they're groaning and stuff like that. And, I'm just going to say it, right? The commercial here where Travis Kelsey doesn't drink beer and no one talks and they just kind of grunt. It's like what you think all blue collar middle class men do that? You think that they just grunt and that they don't drink beer and they sit down and they grunt? Like, I don't know. It's just cheap. It's pandering. I hate it. Here's my issue. I will bet a free case of Bud Light after rebate that the company's new deal with this WWE, that's what they're trying to do now. See, they're throwing spaghetti at a wall now. They're trying to figure out what sticks. They've got this new deal with WWE. I guarantee it has nothing to do with, how this sport is excellent. It's a recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment. It has nothing to do with that, and it has everything to do with somebody in a boardroom, one of these losers in a boardroom, and they're like, I bet these rubes love their wrestling. Like that's what they think about you. A simple whoops, we messed up. I'm sorry that we hired Dylan Mulvaney. Right? A simple I'm sorry, we messed up could have avoided this $20 billion loss. I mean, but and like these bottling centers where they bottle the beer, they've closed down. I think it was near 700 people they had to lay off. This is having real effects on real people. And it could have been a very different outcome had they just said, whoops, we messed up. But instead, we've got Bud Light here trying to go a million different directions, and they're trying to throw spaghetti at a wall to see what sticks. And they're pandering. All right, do want to shift gears. Let's talk about Donald Trump. I love this. This is such a great. I love how Donald Trump talks about this on Truth Social. So Donald Trump, he offered his view about the little bag of cocaine found in the West Wing of the White House. And he says that, come on, guys, we know the Secret Service probably knows the identity of the person who was in possession of this substance. Now, this is what Donald Trump says on Truth Social. And here we go. We're going to try my best Donald Trump impression. Does anybody really believe that cocaine, folks, was found in the West Wing of the White House? Very close, very, very close to the Oval Office. Is for the use of anyone other than Hunter and Joe Biden? But watch the fake news media. The fake news. I see you right back there. The fake news. I see you back there. We'll start saying soon the amount found was very, 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 very small. And that it wasn't really cocaine, but rather common ground up aspirin. They just grounded it up. And the story will vanish. It'll vanish. Has deranged Jack Smith, the crazy Trump-hating special prosecutor, has he been seen in the area with the cocaine? He looks like a crackhead to me. Yes. I absolutely love Donald Trump. This is the Donald Trump that I elected in 2020. This is the Donald Trump that you elected in 2016. I wasn't old enough to vote in 2016. But he continues here. He goes, where are the White House security tapes? Like the ones I openly and happily gave to the deranged Jack Smith, which will quickly show where the cocaine in the White House came from. They already know the answer. They probably don't like it. They probably don't, folks. I'm sorry. They probably don't. That's Donald Trump on Truth Social. So he's talking about the security tapes. Obviously, we could probably find out whose cocaine it is. And to be fair with you, I think that it could be, for certain, I think that it is Hunter Biden's cocaine, but it's a very real possibility that there are just some White House aides that, snort coke in the bathroom. I mean, these people are gross. They're incestual. They party a lot. Republicans and Democrats. I've seen it, right? I've gone to Republican conferences and there's been Republicans whom I love are big drinkers, they're big partiers, and it's what they do in Washington D.C. That's what they do. So, a former lab test confirmed that the white substance found at the White House on Sunday is in fact cocaine. So, unlike what Donald Trump said, it'd be really hard for the fake news media to come out later and say that it is just crushed up aspirin, but I wouldn't be shocked, right? I am waiting for the headlines to say, well, this was a very small amount, folks. We're talking, very small amount of cocaine. NBC, I'm sure will have that out there. So President Joe Biden was at Camp David with his son over the 4th of July weekend. They got back to the White House in time for Independence Day. Now, Hunter Biden, he was there 2 days prior to the discovery, and we know that he has a long, long, long drug use and abuse history, and it's been revealed through his infamous abandoned laptop. Right? We've seen the videos of him smoking crack cocaine. Um, Now, the cocaine initially was identified as an unknown item, and they were quick to brush off the substance as a nasal spray. But as things got leaked, we found out that it was in fact cocaine. Now, the White House press secretary, the Black lesbian and diversity hire, Karen Jean-Pierre, she told reporters, she goes, "Look, Joe Biden thinks that this is very important to get to the bottom of it. He thinks it's important to get to the bottom of." Okay. I'm waiting. I'm waiting there, Caron Jean-Pierre. I'll be back here on the other side, folks. BLM activist, he's blaming conservatives in wake of this transgender mass shooter in Philadelphia. And he's claiming that he wasn't really transgender. The ladies' clothes, the cross-dressing, the fact that he was using a different name and pronouns. I don't know. I think that he's transgender. And I'm sorry, BLM activists, but that's not violent for me just stating the obvious that this guy is a transgender shooter. I'll be back on the other side. Hey, if you're watching the video right now, be sure to smash the like button. So we've got Colson out there this morning. He says, "That's your side. That's the fascist. Stop deflecting, Jackie." Oh, gosh, no. So Jacqueline, she comes out and she says, "Look, censorship is fascism. This administration and Biden are fascists." So Colson, if you're listening and if you're watching right now and you're a leftist, give me one example of somebody on the right being a fascist, somebody on the right in modern day history being a fascist. Do we censor? I'm sorry. I don't think that the conservatives in the U.S. in the United States and in the state of Illinois, I don't think that we're the ones who are censoring people on big tech with big tech companies. I'm sorry, but please point me in the direction where you believe that we're fascists, and I'm sure that you just believe that people on the right are fascist because NBC told you so. So, I am going to be talking a lot about this federal judge blocking the Biden administration from coordinating with these big tech companies to suppress content. This is a huge win for you and I. This means it's a win for freedom of speech. It's a win for free speech, for our First Amendment. And this federal judge blocks Joe Biden from talking with these big tech companies to try to suppress or really censor content. So we are going to be talking a lot about that. A big win, frankly. I think that it's going to get up to the Supreme Court. So I think that it's a single win. It's not like it's a big win, but it's a single big win. It's a single big win in a much longer war. And it would not surprise me if this goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. If you're watching right now, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. Like, share, love this video out with your friends. Now, I do want to get into this Jeff Fritzen, and he's suing the town of Normal and High Haven. So he's got this lawsuit against them. He's a former Normal Town Councilman, Jeff Fritzen, and Fritzen's suit follows Normal Council members' May approval of this special zoning permit that would allow this Glenview-based High Haven cannabis company to take over the former. It's a restaurant right over here. It's called Mandarin Garden. They want to go into that space there. It's right there at the shops at College Hill, and they want to turn it into a dispensary. Okay, fine, whatever. Fritzen, he uses the suit, and he argues that the town was legally required to wait a year before deciding to approve the resubmitted permit. So I think that they denied High Haven at first, then High Haven resubmitted. And legally, I think that the town was supposed to wait a year before deciding to approve the resubmitted permit, and is asking the court to put a stop to the High Haven coming forward and moving into the building. Now, Jeff Fritzen, you need to know this, is a leftist, okay? He's not a friend of the right. He's not a friend of the citizen. How do I know this? Because he sided with the town against citizens who wanted more representation. According to Illinois law, uh, incorporated towns in which normal was deemed an incorporated town, because when we tried to district out and have district representation here in the town of Normal, that's similar to a ward system that the city of Bloomington has. When we tried to do that, we were shut down by the town, and the town then said, "Hey, you can't have that because we're an incorporated town." Okay, so what is an incorporated town? Well, an incorporated town has multiple uh, criteria that comes with it, laid out in the Illinois law. And in Illinois law, it says that you have to have certain representatives representing you at that local level if you're an incorporated town over 25,000 people. So you have to have like a clerk, an assessor, collector, and this is all according to Illinois state statute. So what happened? Well, there were individuals who ran and they tried to get onto the ballot for these specific positions laid out in Illinois law. It went to court, and basically Judge Fellheimer said, well, it's a home rule town, so you can pretty much do whatever you want, and you don't have to abide by Illinois state statute. So, I mean, up to this point, it is a mess of a story. Sharon Chung, she got out there. They broke the law. They said that they weren't going to follow that law, and it's because they're home rule. So, what did Sharon Chung do? She went out and she created legislation that pretty much exempts Normal from the Illinois statute. So, break a law, change a law. That's what happened. And Jeff Fritzen was all in support of this. And I'm sorry, Jeff, but you probably would have gotten a lot more support here had you not sided with the town against citizens who wanted more representation according to Illinois law. So back to the lawsuit. I'm going to predict this one. We've got Jeff Fritzen out there, and if he gets to court with Judge Foley, Rebecca Foley, most likely she's going to rule that the town of Normal is home rule and therefore can do whatever they want. It's the same ruling that Judge Fellheimer used. Home rule actually does not give municipalities unlimited power, but the ruling class makes that claim anyway. And unless you're the rich government, the filthy rich government, then they are going to have all of the money in the world to defeat you. So, Jeff, I wish you luck, but I know what's going to happen. You are going to be met with all kinds of money in defense. It's very expensive to try to uh, stand up against the town. Jeff Fritzen, he filed a lawsuit against the town of Normal and against this High Haven dispensary. He did this on June 12th, folks. Now, the case has been assigned to the McLean County Circuit Court judge. Her name is Rebecca Foley. Now, there's no court date that I can see. I'm going to predict this right now. I'm sorry, Jeff, but you're probably going to lose. Why? Because the town has unlimited resources. They're going to be willing to spend whatever tax money they need to in order to get this to go away. So he's got a lawsuit against the town. The whole lawsuit argues that the town was legally required to wait 1 year before deciding to approve the resubmitted permit. So High Haven wants to go in and move into this building. It's called Mandarin Garden. It's right across from the studio here, actually. It's a dispensary. And it was denied, but then I think that they resubmitted a special use permit. And Jeff Fritzen, he's actually a former Normal Town Council member, and his suit follows Normal Town Council members, their approval of the special use permit that allowed this Glenview-based High Haven cannabis company to take over the former restaurant here at the Shops of College Hill, right across from the studio, and turn it into a dispensary. And he says that they should have waited a year before deciding to approve this resubmitted permit. So the permit was denied, the special use permit was denied, and then they resubmitted it, and then they approved it. And he said that, hey, you have to wait a year, and this is all according to ordinances that are within the town's like code. So Jeff Fritzen, not really a friend of the right. He did side with the town of Normal against the citizens who wanted more representation according to Illinois law when it came to trying to get certain positions on the ballot. So he sided with the town instead when it came to that issue. And if you haven't heard, J.B. Pritzker, he signed this little legislation. And what it does, it makes the town of Normal the only incorporated town in the state of Illinois that doesn't have to follow existing law. There's existing state statute that says if you're an incorporated town over 25,000 people, then you have to have these positions be elected. And people tried to get on the ballot to run in those positions, but they were knocked off. And, they did this whole break a law, change a law thing. Sharon Chung, you know the story. And basically, what this law that Governor J.B. Pritzker signed proves is that the citizens were right. They were right. And it proves that Democrats don't believe in voting rights. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in the rights of citizens to have direct representation. Bottom line. And if I had to predict this, and I love the way BLN News puts this, Diane says this, if I had to predict this, once this goes to court with Judge Rebecca Foley and Fritzen, right? Rebecca Foley is going to say, hey, the town of Normal is a home rule municipality and therefore can do whatever they want. Because that is the exact same ruling, essentially, what Judge Fellheimer used. Home rule does not give municipalities unlimited power, but the ruling class thinks that, and they're going to make that claim anyway. And look, if you aren't the filthy rich government, then you're not going to win. I'm sorry, Jeff, but you're not going to win because they will do whatever it takes to spend whatever tax money they need to shut you up and to get this to go away. All right, I do want to shift gears. Let's talk about it. This guy, he's a BLM activist. And this is a real shame, folks. BLM activist, he's blaming conservatives now for violence, I guess. Because we posted pictures, conservatives posted pictures revealing that this alleged culprit is a cross-dressing Black Lives Matter activist, the guy who shot 5 people, including a 15-year-old boy in Philadelphia. It was heartbreaking. The scene was bloody. There was a 2-year-old who was shot in the leg. Now Black Lives Matter is responding to that shooting, and the organization decided, you know what, we're not going to speak out against the actions of the shooter. No. We're going to speak out against the actions of the conservatives who posted pictures of the shooter dressed in women's clothes and wearing a woman's bra. Yes, because they're the violent ones. So we posted pictures. Conservatives posted pictures of this guy. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to elevate the shooter anymore. But he goes by a female name and he wears women's clothing. And this BLM activist got out there and started spewing out this lie that conservatives are the violent ones because they posted pictures of what the guy looked like. Here we go.
By the conservative press regarding the shooter. There are certain pictures that are circulating. Some of you may be aware of those pictures. Have the shooter in one picture as male and other pictures dressed in female attire or female outfits. They have used those pictures to attack trans people and particularly trans women of color, which are extremely vulnerable to violence in our community. I want to set the record straight because language is extremely important when we're talking about anything dealing with violence in trans community.
There you have it, folks. My gosh, my problem here is that it's pretty clear that this guy who shot all of these people, he's cross-dressing in a way that is evidence of him identifying as a transgender individual. And look, I don't feel much pressure here to respect whatever nuances are being proposed by this BLM activist. We're dealing with a mass shooter who dresses like a woman, and he goes by a feminized name. Call that what you will, but it's highly probable that this guy is suffering from mental delusions, and he is suffering from the same mental delusions that a transgender shooter from Nashville suffered from. Despite them making up only a fraction of the population, there have been numerous transgender shooters over the last several years. Okay, and almost without fail, the press, the activists, they come out and then they try to claim, oh, they're not really transgender. That's just too convenient, in my opinion. There is violence, and it's not being perpetuated by conservatives. No, the violence is being perpetuated by this guy, the shooter who killed 5 people and wounded several people. That should be the focus here, not conservatives who are just noting the fact that this guy was a transgender individual. 309-451-9299. I've got to take a break, but we're going to be back. Scott Robbins joins me next. Scott's takes. He's from Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. He's a radio legend, folks. You won't want to miss it here. Coming up at about 7:40. I think it's just a smart business move to avoid people that use these they them pronouns. I mean, my pronouns are USA. Scott
Yeah,
Robbins.
well, sure, you can, you can
American.
be whatever you want, right?
It can be whatever you want.
I'm not going to call you USA though. That's just too complicated. I'm going to continue to call you CAD if that's okay with you.
You know what? That's fine.
Okay.
I'll just have to stomach it. I won't go to HR. Don't worry, Scott.
Okay. Yeah. Don't go. Oh, jeez.
Go to HR.
You know, I got to tell you something. I mean, and I realize that, I mean, we live in, everybody's so sensitive about what you say and how you say it and blah, blah, blah. I think there is a pushback going on, though. I really do. I feel that way. I feel like people have just had enough. Well, I'm done playing this game with you. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go ahead and say what I feel. And if you don't like it, that's too bad. If I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry. But I'm not going to, you're not going to push me into doing something I don't want to do. I think a lot of corporations are waking up to this. I think a lot of people just in their general vernacular back and forth with each other are feeling the same way. I could be totally wrong. I mean, but it seems that way. It just seems like I always think the pendulum swings out way too far, and it has. And people realize this is garbage, and it starts to swing back. And I hope that's true, particularly with these pronouns. And I got to say it this way, and I can't say this. And it changes every day. I mean, you need a freaking scorecard just to know where everything is, right? So you're being politically correct. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I was a person at one point in time in my life, I was a program director, and you hired people and you fired people. I mean, it's not a fun task either, but it's part of the job, right? So you try to get the qualified candidates, try to get the best fit for, in my case, it was broadcast, the best fit broadcast wise with the current team you have. And also somebody who had a fair amount of talent. You can always coach them and mold them and do all that stuff. But when you start to see red flags in resumes, and a lot of times that happens. I mean, when you get a guy who's like, he's for, in 1 year, he's worked for 5 radio stations or whatever. It's like probably problematic there, right? I mean, you can see getting into one bad situation, but not a bunch of them. Now we got to contend with this they, them crap and all the other stuff we got to do, right? But this is interesting. According to a new report from business.com, they're a resource platform. Over 80% of non-binary people believe that identifying as non-binary would hurt their job search. 51% believe their gender identity has affected their workplace experience very or somewhat negatively. It's funny how the left, when issues like this arise, always proclaim that it's due to uneducated idiots, just need to be brought to the light. Then they'll embrace the whole deities and changes and hiring practices. Well, I think they're barking up the wrong tree here. Here's what the study found. The synopsis here. Business.com also went a step further in sending 2 identical phantom resumes to 180 unique job postings that were explicitly open to entry-level candidates in an effort to test whether or not the inclusion gender-neutral pronouns impacts how players perceive resumes. Both generated ambiguous names, like Taylor Williams, for instance. The only difference between the test and the control resumes was the presence of gender pronouns.
Oh,
yeah,
boy.
and they found out the gender pronouns, whether you like it or not, or whether you think it's discriminatory or not, were viewed as like, I can't have this, right? I mean, they're already doing this, the gender pronoun thing. What kind of employees is it going to be? And the majority said, no, we don't want that. You can be whatever you want to be. We're not going to discriminate you because you're gay. We're not going to discriminate against you because of race or whatever, but we may discriminate you against the whole pronoun thing because it spells trouble for our business. It doesn't. And you can see that, right? What kind of employee are you going to get that demands that you use pronouns? I mean, again, I'm hiring. My business, my place, I got to bring people in and hire them. I got to get the best. I got to get the brightest as I possibly can with constraints on salary. But I'm not going to play this game. I look at you as problematic right from the get-go. So guess who gets the job? The person who didn't do this. And you both can be gay, you both can be a minority, you both can be whatever. That's what they did. They compared the two. They just went, okay, this person is problematic. So anyway,
it's
like
one
it or not,
thing to put it on your resume, and it's one thing to put it like in an email signature or like on your own personal social media. But when you are going to the lengths of putting it on your resume and making it know, like it's almost like I'm looking for your experience. I'm looking if you have the skills for this job, and you almost think that your pronouns are worthy enough to put on there as like a skill or like some sort of
Right.
attribute. It's like,
Right.
no, that's just barking up the wrong tree.
Well, you're
If
already
you're
asking.
hiring somebody like that.
You're asking the company to bend some way or another for you,
Mhm.
and chances are they're not, because there's 4 other people I can hire. Why would I do this? This self-inflicted wound, right? So that's I thought was an interesting study, because that's exactly what's happening. Cocaine in the White House, Kat. What do you make of that, huh?
Have you seen this video? There's no audio to the video, but it's Hunter Biden and he smacks his forehead. It's like there's a drip of sweat and like he smacks his forehead and hits it pretty hard and then wipes the sweat off of his brow. And
Right.
I mean, he looks like he's tweaking. Like if I had to guess, it looks like he's high on something.
Right. Well, I mean,
and that's what's going viral right now on Twitter.
Yeah.
Is like this video of him just smacking the sweat off of his head. Like
it wouldn't exactly be out of character for him to videotape himself while under the influence. I mean, he's done it a million times. He apparently likes doing that. Yes, they find this dime bag of cocaine, right? Dime-sized bag of cocaine. Sorry. Within the White House, in the confines, and immediately they're like, well, people have access to that, and blah, 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 blah. And but listen, why would somebody on a tour of the White House just drop a bag somewhere? Does that make any sense to anybody? Because there's cameras everywhere. They got to know who did this. They have to know.
And if you're going through a tour of the White House, I wasn't able to. I went to the White House and got to see it, but that was, post 2020 election. So there's these big bars that are up, like these big black bars. It almost looks like it's kind of creepy. It's where it's like these big black fence around the White House, like you can't go in, and they weren't giving tours at the time. But when you go in for a tour, what they'll do is they'll scan you. Like you have to walk through metal detectors.
Yeah.
You have to like go through security, and you have to empty your pockets, right? Like you would through TSA.
Right.
And I don't know, if somebody had a dime bag of coke on them, I'd imagine that kind of falls out, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you hide that, right?
I don't know either. I don't know either. And so was it somebody inside the White House? Sounds like it. Again, we got no proof on anything. We may never have proof on anything. But I thought Andrea Mitchell, here we go. This is an interesting take on what they found. Of course, it's typical Andrea Mitchell. But anyway, here we go.
So, Mike, where do things stand now? This is so unusual. You and I have covered the White House for years. I can't even fathom anything like this having been found before in the West Wing. And I go back to the 70s at the White House. So this is pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's absolutely extraordinary, Andrea. And this new conclusive test confirms what had been the preliminary field test conducted by DC fire personnel who were called in on Sunday night after the discovery of this suspicious substance by a uniformed officer in the Secret Service that was conducting a routine patrol of the White House. And so to recap on the developments that we've been reporting on yesterday, this was found, we understand, in a highly trafficked common area of the West Wing. It's an area where individuals, especially visitors, individuals who may be coming for instance, a private tour, might have been asked to leave some of their personal belongings before heading into more sensitive areas of the West Wing, which of course includes the president's, the vice president's office, some of the most senior officials' offices, as well as the press team and a number of deputies.
Okay, so there you go. So there you go. This is the way it's going to be. They just can't believe it, and and then the story will be dropped. It'll go away. It may already be gone by the end of today. You may not see it anywhere. A bag of cocaine was found inside the White House, and immediately we wonder, where's Hunter? Right? Where was he? Was he there? I mean, he treats the White House like a bed and breakfast anyway, right? I mean, he shows up, stays for a couple of days, goes out and does whatever he does, and comes back. I mean, it's remarkable. You can't say that though. Just quiet now. But everybody on the planet went right away. Well, where's the kid at? Right? Crazy. Okay, real quick. Go see this movie if you get a chance. Okay, Kat, you've seen it. I saw it last night.
It's the best movie out there.
It's very good. It's sometimes tough to watch, but it's called Sound of Freedom. True story. It will open your eyes, and it will make you think to yourself of the absolute evil that exists on this planet. Holy cow. Really well done. Jim Caviezel's in it. Anyway, I saw it last night. It's profound, and you should give it a shot, man. Just go see it. Disney had it for several years, wouldn't release it, but wouldn't give it up. So these guys bought the film back and they released it themselves. And again, one more reason to throw Disney under the bus. Okay, Kat, have a good day.
You have a great day, Scott Robbins.
Okay, and hang in there, kid. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Okay.
Right.
See you later, Scott Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Robbins at Scott's Takes, folks, every morning at around 7:40 in the morning. Scott Robbins, he's a radio legend, folks, and you won't want to miss him on Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins later tonight at 8. Speaking of Sound of Freedom, they blew it out of the water, folks, and they've completely smashed their ticket sales. They made like $14 million in this opening week, and they are surpassing the new woke Indiana Jones film. I've got more on that next. Good morning. It is Friday Eve. It's a Thursday, 7:57 a.m. We are going to be visiting with John Weatherby, our meteorologist. We're going to be talking a little bit about the jet streams going on from the Canadian wildfires. I know you've been scratching your head. You're like, how is it possible that the smoke is coming down from Canada into the state of Illinois? How is that possible? And I've tried to unpack what the jet streams are doing and how the wind is traveling. Hopefully, John Weatherby will be able to enlighten us on what this all means. Plus, there's been some severe weather. I know Lincoln, Springfield, Southern Illinois got hit pretty badly. There was over like 100,000 people without power, which was insane. And I saw this big old garbage truck, like looking thing, smash into the side of one of these buildings in downtown Springfield just this past week, where there was winds that took down power lines. There was some hail in some parts of the state. So we're going to be talking with John Weatherby about some severe weather that we've seen, plus those jet streams coming from Canada, and if he can unpack those for us and try to, give us some information about how this wildfire smoke has gone down into Illinois. Now, also coming up, I do want to talk about this story. Kieran Jean-Pierre, she gave a terrible response to Joe Biden's refusal to acknowledge Hunter's love child with a stripper as his granddaughter. So let's talk about how terrible of a human being Joe Biden is. That's next. Good morning, folks. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Sorry, live radio, dealing with the phone. But also, if you guys are watching right now, can you please like the video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out, folks. We are going to be back. We're going to be talking about Joe Biden and his granddaughter and his refusal to acknowledge that little girl. Now, I like this comment. Bag of blow found at the White House. Wonder if they found Hunter's hookers as well. My favorite video, and I've said this before, from Hunter Biden's laptop, the laptop from hell, is when Hunter Biden himself is talking about his rehab program. So he gets on the phone. I think it's like a FaceTime type deal where he gets on the phone with this widow of his brother, who also happens to be his lover, which is really hilarious. Um, so they get on the phone together, and the widow starts talking about the rehab program, and she's like, "Hunter, are you going? Tell me about the program. Is it helping you?" Right? And he gets all pissed off because she asks about the program, and I guess she calls him at 9 a.m. to talk about the rehab program. And he goes, "Why are you calling me at 9 a.m.? Why are you calling me at 9 a.m. To talk about this program?" And he goes, "I'm not going to talk about it with you because you're going to use it against me." That's what he says to this widow. I mean, the paranoia, like, he's so paranoid, folks, Hunter Biden, and rightfully so, because he's doing shady stuff with Chinese oligarchs and Ukrainian oligarchs, and he's laundering money, right? That's proven, right? He's been funneling money through these different accounts. Joe Biden himself allegedly took at least $10 million in bribes from a Ukrainian oligarch. This Ukrainian oligarch having ties to the KGB. You can't make this stuff up, folks. I really can't make this up. This is a crime family, and I think that video is probably the funniest. Hunter Biden talking about it, his rehab program with the widow, and they're fighting about him having to be up at 9 a.m. in the morning to discuss the rehab program. And then get this, in the middle of them talking about the rehab program, he reaches for the crack cocaine pipe and starts to light up his crack cocaine pipe. truly hilarious stuff. We are going to be talking about the love child who was birthed by a former stripper, whom Hunter impregnated. And Joe Biden refuses to acknowledge this little girl. And the reason why this is news today is because the New York Times did a write up on it. Now, Bud Light, they're also attempting. This is a desperate return to a fratty humor. That's what they're trying to do. They want to return to the fratty humor with this Super Bowl champion who's not allowed to drink beer, mind you. They do this commercial and they try to reach the fratty customers that they, have been avoiding apologizing to. Really, this $20 billion loss that Bud Light is going through right now could have all been prevented had they just said, "We're sorry." All right, folks, we're going to be back. Please go ahead and like the video if you're watching right now. Share this out with your friends. We are going to be talking a bit about President Donald Trump and his view on this bag of cocaine that was found in the West Wing. Uh, it's a funny thing that he put out there on Truth Social. Coming up in just about 10 minutes, Bud Light attempts this very uh, strange pandering commercial. Okay, they tried to return to this fratty humor with this Super Bowl champion who's not allowed to actually drink beer in this new commercial. So, Bud Light, they've said, "Hey, what are we going to do to improve our marketing efforts?" Well, we're going to get a bunch of guys into one room and they're going to throw spaghetti at the wall and they're going to see what sticks. And we're going to completely avoid apologizing to our customers. That's what Bud Light is doing right now. We've got that new commercial here coming up in just a bit. Plus, Donald Trump, he's offering his view on this finding of the cocaine in the West Wing of the White House. He gets on Truth Social and he says that it's pretty likely that the Secret Service already knows the identity of the person who was in possession of this substance. Also, the town of Normal. So this is an interesting story, folks. We have a former Normal Town councilman suing the town of Normal. Plus, he's suing Jeff Fritzen. He's suing the High Haven Cannabis Dispensary. Why? Because, the whole lawsuit itself is based off of, hey, we want you to be legally required. You were legally required to wait a year before deciding to approve this resubmitted special use permit to put High Haven in this abandoned restaurant. It's the Mandarin Garden restaurant here in Normal. And he's asking the court to put a stop to High Haven's move into that building because the town was legally required to wait a year before deciding to approve this resubmitted permit. So all of this and more ahead on the Morning Buzz. I don't want to waste any more time. Meteorologist John Weatherby, he's joining me here on the Morning Buzz. I'm so excited.
Good morning.
Good morning. People love you, by the way, John Weatherby. We're very excited for you to join us.
Thank you.
I want to talk about the Canadian wildfires today
Mhm.
because I've had a lot of people just scratching their heads. They're like, how could it come all the way down from Canada? New York
Oh.
kind of makes sense. Does it have to deal with the jet streams?
Very much to do with the jet stream. Canadian wildfire season is normally June, July, August into September. But the province of Alberta kind of became on fire February and March. And that's where the major Canadian wildfires continue to burn today. They're not out. We may not have the deep haze and the choking smoke that we've experienced in the past, but we will again before the summer is over because of what the jet does and is able to move those particulates through the atmosphere. And as those particulates slow down and fall out of the jet, they fall to the ground, and that's the haze that we see. Here's the thing, the important thing to understand. What caused the wildfires to start early was a very dry winter through the Canadian prairies. That dry winter then got what we think was a natural start from a thunderstorm, lightning hitting the ground and causing things to starting to burn. There's no evidence that I've read that says that there was any malicious activity that started these wildfires. They certainly have choked almost all of Alberta, Saskatchewan now working toward Manitoba and across the continent. That's the easiest way to say it. And what happens is it dips farther to the south because through this spring, that's been the normal, quote unquote, jet stream pattern coming northwest to southeast. Sometimes we get cooler. Sometimes that jet returns back to the north and it gets warmer, very warm, very quickly. And that's the way our summer is going to be. So understand that the Canadian wildfire smoke is hazardous. This is not the kind of air pollution you get from the back of a car. This is not the kind of pollutants, of ozone pollutants that we sometimes worry about during the summer when air quality alerts get issued. This is stuff that can in fact hurt you, especially smaller citizens and senior citizens whose lungs may not be quite as developed or quite as efficient as they used to be. That's the medical term, which I find kind of a funny term. Anyway, the point is,
I'll just tell you right now, John Weatherby, I made the mistake. I went on a run outside when this happened, right? And I came in the next morning and my throat was on fire. And I was a previous smoker, my former nicotine stained hand, right? I mean, I used to smoke and I quit a couple of years ago, but I'm not kidding you. It felt like what it was like when I was smoking. I was like, man, this is terrible. I was like, this is really it's a thick smog out there and it's got a smell to it. And I don't know if you saw this, there was some news about a possible Indiana. It was a gas refiner or like an oil refinery. They had like a small leak and people were reporting in Indiana and parts of Illinois. They're right on the Indiana-Illinois border that they were smelling like almost a sulfur type smell. And
I read that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess Indiana, would that jet stream also kind of pull in maybe a possible gas leak smell from Indiana?
It sure would. But it's not like that would be coming backwards to what has been the traditional pattern all the way through spring and now here into the summer. It's always possible because different gases, especially sulfur, tend to be sometimes heavier than the rest of the atmosphere and get moved in different directions and in different ways. Plus, what was the wind doing at the time? Were there thunderstorms in the area that generated some briefly gusty winds that might have pushed that gas smell back into Illinois? Okay, the bottom line is we're not done. The bottom line is be safe. The bottom line is understand what's happening, and eventually these fires will burn themselves out, but they're nowhere close, according to the Canadian authorities. They're nowhere close. And Canada got another set of wildfires on the other side of the continent through the Canadian provinces. over Nova Scotia, and that caused or that enhanced some of the haze and smoke over the Northeast in New York City. We don't have that to worry about today. We do have a northwest wind today that's going to be gusting up to 16, so there may be some haze. In fact, this morning, little fog and haze visibilities reduced a bit, but nothing like we've seen in the past.
Right.
And anytime there's a rain event that comes along, that tends to wash the atmosphere a bit. And we've got a 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms late Friday night after midnight and during the day Saturday. Well, that's lousy for anything you've got planned on Saturday, but that will help with that haze as well.
Yeah, anything to get that away, that haze away. But I do want to, before you go, John Weatherby, we're talking with meteorologist John Weatherby, Cities 92.9. Now, before you go, these storms that happened, I was talking to people in Lincoln, Illinois, which is pretty central, closer there to Springfield.
Right where it is, sure.
And they said that they did not hear the sirens. There was no warning issued. And I mean, we know that there's a Doppler radar thing there right in the community of Lincoln.
There's a National Weather Service office right in Lincoln. That's right.
Yeah, and they did not have a tornado warning or anything. So I saw with my eyes a semi-truck trailer just flip over vertically. It wasn't like horizontally, it was vertically. Now, my question to you would be, is it possible for a straight line wind to do that? Or did a tornado have to be touched down?
No. Tornado is identified simply by a circular pattern. And when investigators go back to an area to determine what happened, they look for circular damage. A tree falling this way, and then a little farther to the west, the tree now falls that way, and it creates a bit of a circle. And they are able to determine now with drones, it makes it even easier. They're able to determine the damage pattern. And if it's circular, that's a tornado. But straight line winds can be just as damaging. And this time of year, with that derecho that came in earlier this week or earlier this month, actually last month, when that derecho comes through, that's all straight line winds. There's no rotation at all. Having seen that site with that tractor trailer is incredibly scary, but incredibly true that it can happen and does happen in these kind of wind events.
Interesting. Yeah. And I was just like, well, I don't know if things touched down. Now they could have, but there was no warning, or like there was no tornado warning issued in that area. And you would think,
because there's protocols on tornado warnings, looking for rotation. The Doppler radars are all set up with algorithms that are designed to identify rotations. They're not designed to identify straight line winds. They can show straight line winds, but most of the warning systems are built on that rotation because those rotations are so much more dangerous and structurally dangerous as a tornado than as just a straight line wind. I'm not surprised there was not any kind of tornado warning. Usually there's a special weather statement that the Lincoln office will put out, which I saw a couple of those. But those statements don't have the same kind of impact, I guess is a good word. They don't have the same kind of, oh gosh, I've got to take action right now. Like a tornado warning would cause you to say, oh, I got to take action right now. Where's everybody? Are they in their safe place? Derechos and straight line wind storms, which sometimes are very typical through the summer months across Illinois, they normally don't have those special tornado warning kind of signatures.
Interesting. Well, John Weatherby, we're getting close to a break. I so do appreciate you. How do we find out more about you as a meteorologist, and how do we follow you?
If you want to, I'm on Twitter, and I refuse to pay attention to any of this social media garbage. I'm at Big John Weather. I don't care what Facebook does. Twitter seems to be the most efficient way to get out weather information for me. If I go through Facebook, the algorithm may hold my forecast for a week before it actually comes out. So I kind of stay away from Facebook. Social media and websites. I try to be the station's website. I try to be what Cities wants me to be for their website. But in terms of other social media courses, Big John Weather, BigJohnWeather is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Oh, yeah. And we on Cities 92.9, we're on Twitter. And that is, I agree, the best way to find your weather information. And we just retweet you, John.
It's not great. It's not great. every platform. I don't dance, so I'm not doing TikTok. Well, you know what I mean. It's just there's so many different flavors out there. I just try to get the information to you as quickly as I can without a lot of tap dance and without a lot of hype.
I love it. John Weatherby, you have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz.
My pleasure, Kat. Have a great day, kids. Bye.
Bye. All right, John Weatherby. Folks, we do have to take a break. I will be back. That was super helpful. I don't know. I hope that was helpful for you as far as the Canadian wildfires. This seems to be not of the norm. So if you haven't experienced these Canadian wildfires in years past, there's a reason why. John Weatherby gave us some information. So that was great. We are going to be back. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump and his reaction on Truth Social to the cocaine found in the White House, plus the town of Normal being sued. That's next. Okay, we're back. Now, if you're watching, go ahead, smash that like button. If you're watching right now, we have to be sure that we like the channel, subscribe to the channel. That's the only way this microphone stays on, folks. So I see you watching right now. Be sure to smash the like button. We're going to be back. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump on Truth Social. I'm going to give you my best Donald Trump impersonation, but he comes out and he says, I mean, just the most hilarious thing about this cocaine found in the White House. Plus Jeff Fritzen. So this is all from BLN News, and I've tried to understand what's going on. You can check out the entire news article on cities99.com. Turns out Jeff Fritzen, he's got this lawsuit filed against the town of Normal. So according to municipal code, and I think that Jeff is actually kind of right here. Now, Jeff Fritzen is no friend of the right, right? He sided with the town of Normal when it came to saying no to citizens, to having more representation. I think that Jeff Fritzen would probably have gotten a lot more support had he not sided with the town against the citizens who wanted representation according to Illinois law, but he sided with the town. Instead, now he's got a lawsuit against the town because he says that the town was legally required to wait a year. Well, he argues in his suit, via the suit, he argues that the town was supposed to wait a year before deciding to approve this resubmitted permit. It's a special use permit where the town is approving this high haven to go into this building. It's the Mandarin Garden restaurant. It's right across the street here from the station. And it they should have waited a year before approving this resubmitted permit. And he's asking the court to put a stop to the high haven coming into this building. So Jeff Fritzen, like I said, no friend of the citizen. I have no idea what his motives here are, Jeff Fritzen, with this lawsuit, what he has to gain from this. I agree with him. I don't think that there should be a cannabis dispensary there, because at the end of the day, if his suit is successful, then there would be no cannabis dispensary that pops up there because the town would have been acting illegally if his suit is correct, and that they should have waited a year to approve the resubmitted special use permit. Now, Jeff Fritzen, no friend of the right, no friend of the citizen, because guess what? He decided to side with the town of Normal against the citizens who wanted more representation according to Illinois law. So this is my problem with people. They cherry pick and choose what laws benefit them, and they decide to ignore the other laws that don't really bother them. So in this particular case, there's a state statute that says that an incorporated town over 25,000 people have to select or elect via a ballot some positions that could be a town clerk, collector, assessor, these different types of positions. If you're an incorporated town, which the town of Normal is, we found that out in a prior lawsuit because there was a prior lawsuit against the town, or a prior, hey, we want to have districting. People tried to get the district question, the referendum of, hey, shall there be, 8 districts in the town of Normal or something like that, to where we aren't an at-large government anymore. People tried to get that question on the ballot. The town of Normal shut it down and said that we are not like a city, we're not like a certain municipality, and we are an incorporated town, and we are exempt from having districts because we're an incorporated town and we can't legally do the the districting. So, the town of Normal, being an incorporated town, has to abide by certain elected positions being on the ballot if you're over 25,000 people, which Normal is. So, point is, the town of Normal, they broke a law, they changed a law. Pritzker signed legislation making Normal the only incorporated town that doesn't have to follow existing state statute. They have their own law now locking citizens out of getting representation based off of municipal code. So this is a big deal, folks. This was a huge deal for the town of Normal. It just proves that Democrats, normal Mayor Chris Coos, it just proves that Democrats don't believe in voting rights. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in the rights of citizens or direct representation. So I don't know what Jeff Fritzen's end game is here, but my thing is Jeff, where were you? You sided with the town of Normal over this issue when it came to having these elected representatives for the incorporated town that was afforded to us by Illinois law, and where you sided with the town on that, and now you've got a lawsuit against the town for this cannabis industry, and it's like you're citing their municipal code as to a reason why, because they should have waited a year to approve this special use permit. But Jeff, I don't know. I don't know, man. If I had to guess, the town of Normal is going to come after you, and they are willing to spend a lot of money for appeals. They're willing to spend whatever tax money they need to spend to get you to quiet down, and to get this to go away. As always, folks, I'm live in studio on YouTube and on Facebook. You can go there. You can see me in studio. I can interact with you via the comments. You can subscribe to the channel, like and share this video out with your normie friends. This is so important that you get this message out, that you get this news out there, because nobody else talks about it. Like they're going to probably stop talking about the cocaine that was found in the White House. Yes, so I have in my hands Donald Trump's Truth Socials, his like tweets, I guess. So Donald Trump gets out there and he responds, and he offers a viewpoint really on the bag of cocaine found in the West Wing of the White House, saying it's more than likely that the Secret Service, they already know the identity of the individual who has or was in possession of this substance. Like there's fingerprints. There's got to be fingerprints on the bag. There's got to be security cam footage, right? So Donald Trump, he gets on Truth Social, and here's my best impression of Donald, okay? This is funny. I was rolling on the floor laughing this morning at these Truth Socials. Here we go. Does anybody really believe that cocaine found in the West Wing of the White House, very close, folks, very close to the Oval Office, is for the use of anyone other than Hunter and Joe Biden? But watch! The fake news media, I see them back there, folks. But watch. I see those fake news media. They'll start saying that the amount found was very, very small. So small. And it really wasn't cocaine, but rather just ground up aspirin. The story will vanish. Has deranged Jack Smith, the crazy Trump-hating special prosecutor, has he been to the area of the cocaine because he looks like a crackhead to me? Folks! And then I love it. He says, he brings up the security tapes. He's like, why have they not released the security footage and find out? I mean, Caroline Jean-Pierre, she's out there, folks, and she's saying that, President Joe Biden, he thinks that it's very important to get to the bottom of this. Well, not that important, because where's the security tapes? Do you have the security tapes? Have you dusted for fingerprints? Come on, folks. We know whose coke that is. Hunter Biden, who was at the White House only 2 days prior to the discovery, has a long history of drug use and abuse, which has been revealed through his infamous laptop from hell. The cocaine was initially identified as an unknown item. They tried to brush this under the rug really quickly, but it didn't work. They tried to say at first it was like a nasal spray, which I'm like, okay. But they tried to brush this under the rug. It's not going to work. This story should not die. We should not have cocaine in the White House. Federal judge blocking Joe Biden from coordinating with big tech to suppress content is huge. It's a huge win for freedom of speech. So what happened? There was this federal judge, and he blocks the Biden administration from talking with. He says, look, you got to stop communication with big tech companies. Okay. There's no way that you can continue to censor individuals and coordinate with big tech companies to censor content about the scandemic and the 2020 scheme election. That's what I call them. This is being called a massive win for free speech, and it is. It's a massive win. There was a federal judge. He blocked the Biden administration from coordinating with big tech companies to block or suppress content. The injunction comes from a lawsuit brought by the Missouri and Louisiana attorney generals, claiming that the White House went way too far in coordinating with big tech companies to censor this content. So in his ruling, the great federal judge, Terry Doughty, says that the plaintiffs have a strong likelihood of proving that the U.S. government suppressed dissent. And he has now ordered the administration and federal agencies to cease communication with big tech companies. This is awesome. Now, I like to play this game in my head. I'm like, okay, well, what are the corporate journalismers? What are they saying about all of this? What are they saying about this? Well, here we go. I'm going to read it from you. Here's from the mainstream media. The Donald Trump appointed judge move could undo efforts to enhance coordination between the government and social media companies. So notice how there's this big bias here. They say Donald Trump appointed judge. Totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. They just throw that in there, and then they say that there's efforts to enhance coordination. Like, this is a good thing that the social media companies, big tech, is acting at behest of the government. That is a bad thing. That is a bad thing for journalism. That is a bad thing for the free press. That is a bad thing for free speech. Now, it's not too hard to find the Biden administration denying that they're doing this. They're not denying it. They're bragging about it. They brag about censoring people. So I've got a clip here of Jen Psaki, and I think it's going to play, but she is in here at the White House podium. She's talking at the White House podium about Spotify, and she says that she wants to censor Joe Rogan, and that these big tech companies have to be better at censoring Joe Rogan. That's what she says here at the White House podium. So she goes, quote, ultimately, our view is that it's a good step. It's a positive step. And there's more that can be done. When there was somebody who called on Jen Psaki and they asked about, hey, what are we doing about fighting Spotify and getting Spotify to censor Joe Rogan? And she said, ultimately, our view is that this is a good step to combat misinformation, censoring the Joe Rogan podcast. So they tout this stuff from the podium. We have Joe Biden. He is literally on tape begging these big tech companies to censor what Joe Biden claims to be misinformation and disinformation about the vaccine. He says that the vaccine prevents you from getting COVID. We know that that's not true, but he says that anything that goes against that narrative is misinformation. So then he says that it's on the big tech companies to censor anything that goes against that, but that goes against saying that the vaccines do nothing. So what they deem misinformation goes well beyond a public health crisis and faith in our elections. Okay. Facebook started censoring conservative elected officials who criticized Joe Biden's student loan bailout. Yes, the one that was just ruled unconstitutional. They were censoring posts from conservative elected officials that were dissenting, that were pushing back against Joe Biden's student loan bailout. The Intercept, they had an explosive report done in October of 2022. I covered it here on the Morning Buzz. And the Facebook, they essentially created a portal where government officials, they could go in and they could request posts to be censored. So you're a government official, you walk into your job and you log into your portal that Facebook has created for you, and you see a meme of Hunter Biden doing crack cocaine. You can put that meme into the portal and you can say, hey, I want this to be deemed misinformation or disinformation. And website traffic or interactions on social media with that meme of Hunter Biden smoking crack, which is a real picture, right? Taken from the Hunter Biden laptop. What the government was doing at the behest of, or what the big tech companies were doing at the behest of the government, and these government officials were doing, in coordination with big tech companies, they were taking those posts and they were throttling those posts. I say this is a big win. It's a single win in a much longer war. I wouldn't be surprised if this goes up to the Supreme Court, but we'll see. 309-451-9299. Got to take a quick break, but we're going to be back on the live stream. You can check it out there. It's YouTube, Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Go check it out. Just type in Cities 92.9 Conservative Cat. You can also type my name into the search bar. I'll be back. Alrighty, folks. We're going to be back here in just a little bit talking about the town of Normal. If you are watching right now, please smash that like button. Yes, they didn't talk about the hookers. Yes, Luke. Thanks so much for commenting. Yes, so Joe Biden, the mainstream media, the big tech companies, all in coordination, they did everything they could to stop the information that was being leaked out from the Hunter Biden laptop. And all of this is just real information. Well, I think this is incredible news. I'm not much of a Ron DeSantis gal. There's a couple of things in the state of Florida that he's not doing particularly great on. For instance, there was legislation signed by Governor JB Pritzker, no, by Governor Ron DeSantis out of the state of Florida, where it makes it difficult to sue insurance companies. So this was after a horrific hurricane where these insurance companies were kind of paying out pennies to people to rebuild, and people were suing these insurance companies. Now, he took money from the insurance companies. I think it was close to like 9 mil or something like that. I don't know. A bunch of money Ron DeSantis was taking from insurance companies. And he had also signed favorable legislation that made it to where it's difficult to have citizens sue these insurance companies. So there's a couple of things that I'm not a big fan of Ron DeSantis when it comes to things in his own state. So this news I was very excited about because Vivek Ramaswamy is an outsider. He's a tech entrepreneur, much like Donald Trump was in 2016 and still is. He's an outsider. I would say Donald Trump is an outsider. He ran for president and was president for 4 years, but I would say that Donald Trump is still an outsider. That's very clear. Vivek Ramaswamy now trails Ron DeSantis for the 2024 GOP nomination by just 6% in this new national poll. And before you start screaming and you're like, Cat, I don't believe in the polls. Yes, you do. You wouldn't say today that Chris Christie had a chance at becoming the Republican nominee. Okay, so there is to an extent, you believe the polls. Now, if it's close, I do see where people could try to sway these polls. Okay. So Ramaswamy, he gained support here with Republican voters, particularly me, after he was the only presidential candidate to voice some vocal support for Donald Trump when he was criminally indicted. So this is really interesting to see Vivek Ramaswamy gaining ground in this Republican presidential primary. And Ron DeSantis, his own team, has come out before and said that their campaign has to reevaluate Governor Ron DeSantis's poll numbers are falling. Ramaswamy's popularity is increasing among voters. So this will be interesting to see this play out. He might just deplatform Ron DeSantis here. So in this poll, we've got Trump at 49%. Ron DeSantis has fallen 16%, and Ramaswamy has gained, and now he's reaching double digits. That's 10%, so he's just 6% behind Ron DeSantis. Your thoughts, let me know in the comment section on YouTube, Facebook. I'm live there. What are we talking about this morning? Well, before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about a former Normal Town Council member, and his name is Jeff Fritzen. Jeff Fritzen, I don't know. I don't know what to say about him really because he sided with the town of Normal when it came to normal citizens wanting more representation according to Illinois law. So there was a little thing called Illinois law. It was a state statute, and it suggested that hey, if you're an incorporated town, which Normal is of over 25,000 people, then you have to have these certain elected positions on the ballot. People tried to get on the ballot for those positions. They were knocked off quickly by Michael Madigan attorneys, Chicago attorneys that the town of Normal called up to their defense. And they did everything they could to throw these people off of the ballot. Despite there being an Illinois law that says, hey, you need to have these people on the ballot. So now there is legislation that has since been signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, proposed by Sharon Chung, your state representative in the 91st district. If you haven't heard, right, and what this legislation does, it essentially makes Normal the only incorporated town that does not have to follow this existing state statute that says incorporated towns over 25,000 people have to have these certain elected positions. They have their own law now, locking citizens out of getting representation according to municipal code. So it's legal now. Break a law, change a law. Sharon Chung. Jeff Fritzen, he was in support of, and he sided with the town of Normal on this issue. So now he's got a suit against the town of Normal because why? Well, the town of Normal is not following their own municipal code. If they're not following municipal code or their own zoning ordinances, right? They're not following their own zoning or municipal code at the state level, right? Then what stops them from not following their own zoning ordinances and their own special use permit law or regulations, right? Of course, they're not going to follow what is on the books because they don't have to, because they are filthy rich government and they are going to do everything they can to spend taxpayer money to keep them from getting into trouble. And they're just going to keep doing this stuff. So Fritzen here, via his suit, argues that the town was legally required to wait a year before deciding to approve this resubmitted special use permit for High Haven, taking up residency in this building. It's called Mandarin Garden. It's right across the station here. And they were denied. And then I guess they resubmitted a permit and they were approved. I don't know. So at the end of the day, I like what BLN News here has to say about this. Diane Benjamin, she goes, I'm going to predict this one. If if this ever gets to court, right, before Judge Rebecca Foley, that's where this is at right now. So it's with the McLean County Circuit Court, Circuit Judge Rebecca Foley. There's no court date. He filed the suit against Normal and High Haven on June 12th, and it's been assigned to the McLean County Circuit Judge, Rebecca Foley. Now, if this gets before this judge, what's to stop this judge from just doing what Judge Fellheimer did in regards to knocking these people off of the ballot, not having to follow the municipal state code that says that a town over 25,000 people has to have these positions? He said in his ruling, essentially, that home rule gives the town the ability to do whatever really what they want. That's the same. This is the ruling Judge Fellheimer used. What's to stop Rebecca, this judge with this High Haven issue and this special use permit, what's to stop this judge from saying, home rule, it kind of gives them unlimited power? Nothing. They're filthy rich, and the government is always going to have money to defeat you. So, Jeff, it's honorable that you're trying to have this suit out there. I think it's great that you've got this suit out there. You're holding these people accountable. If there's ordinances, if there's legislation, if there's things in the law that legally require you to wait a year before deciding a resubmitted special use permit. Now, I'm not an attorney, okay? If that is in fact the law, then these people do need to be sued. I get that. But Jeff, why does this law bother you so much and not the other law where we could have had more representation and maybe something like this wouldn't have happened? Where if we had more representation, why'd you side with the town? All right. Do have to shift gears. Let's talk about, I got to take a break. But when we come back, folks, Bud Light, they've got this new commercial out there and they're pandering, of course. They said, you know what? Let's just get a bunch of guys in one room, give them a bowl of spaghetti. Let's just start throwing spaghetti at the wall. We'll see what sticks. We're going to try everything in our power to avoid apologizing to the customer. And we're going to keep running these stupid ads. Like, this is what Bud Light is doing at this point. They've lost $20 billion so far. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, they've already closed up some bottling centers where they bottle the beer. They've laid off over 700 people with just those two bottling centers alone. It could have all been avoided had they just said, hey, we messed up. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you're watching right now, go ahead, smash that like button. Smash it right now. Smash it. If you're watching, I see you watching. You better smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel, like and share this out with your normie friends. Now, what I do want to talk about here is the Bud Light commercial one, but also Carol Jean-Pierre. She gave this terrible response. I mean, she was asked about Joe Biden refusing to acknowledge this little girl being his granddaughter and the product of Hunter Biden's love child. It's Hunter Biden's love child with this stripper. So Carol Jean-Pierre, she gives this terrible response about it. And she says, next question. And she, of course, in typical Carol Jean-Pierre diversity higher fashion, she refuses to answer the question and she rushes to another topic. So the reason this is in the news now is because there's this recent New York Times article out there, and it talks about money, it talks about eroding politics, and it also talks about, in their words, what it means to have the Biden birthright name. So the New York Times, they tell a tale here about a little girl who loves playing with her cousins, is learning how to ride a bike, and one day would want to hunt with her mom, the stripper, the former stripper. Then when it comes to these two lines, this is what breaks my heart. Um, I'm going to share this here with you, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen. This is what is in the New York Times article. I paraphrased here at the end, but I'll share this with you. The girl is aware that her father is, in fact, Hunter Biden, and her paternal grandfather is the president of the United States. She speaks about them both often, but she has not yet met them. This is the granddaughter who Hunter Biden fought to prevent using the Biden last name. So there was a whole thing with his baby mama, but they wound up settling the matter. And the girl is going to go by her mother's last name, and she's not going to take the Biden name. Now, the New York Times made it a point to report that there's, quote, no evidence that the White House is involved in those actions, the prevention of using the Biden last name. Just so incredibly sad. And you know the game, right? Imagine if this was Eric Trump, who had a love child with a stripper, and Donald Trump denied the granddaughter's existence and refused to even acknowledge her. At least, um, and at least, Eric fought to prevent the daughter from having his last name, right? You could imagine this scenario, how it would play out, Eric Trump preventing the daughter from having the last name Trump. We all know what would be said about Donald Trump in this instance, right? We know Joe Biden is a scumbag, and this little girl knows that her grandfather just chooses not to acknowledge her. He's a scumbag. Bottom line. So Bud Light attempting they have a desperate attempt here to yeah, throw spaghetti at a wall. This is their marketing nowadays. They're got a bunch of people. They sit down in a room, they throw spaghetti at the wall, and they try to see what sticks. Right. And this former number one beer company, this is their latest attempt in this failed commercial, where they get this Super Bowl champion. His name is Travis Kelsey. Now, I don't know who would recognize Travis Kelsey outside of somebody who lives in Kansas City, who watch football, right? But they have this new commercial out there. I'm going to play it here for you coming up in just a little bit. Uh, but what it's supposed to do is like illustrate what it does. It illustrates blue collar guys, I guess, and they're grunting. Nobody talks in it. Kelsey can't even drink the beer because, fun little fact, if you have an NFL arrangement, they're part of your union contract is that you don't drink beer on camera and you don't do like a direct endorsement of the beer. Now, so he can't drink the beer in this commercial, which is really funny. But I think there's a much bigger problem that we're missing here. It's that Bud Light, the disgraced former vice president of marketing, Alyssa, remember when she said that the brand was fratty and it was out of touch? It was kind of out of touch humor, and it was really important that we had another approach. This is her talking about it. That's the big problem here. That's what she thinks about you. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. You can text in or comment on our YouTube, Facebook Live. I'm there in studio. You can see me here, the Morning Buzz. It's Friday Eve. I've got a comment here. Travis Kelsey is the best tight end in football, arguably ever. So to be fair, he is recognizable person around the NFL fandom. Right. So let's get into it. Bud Light, they've got this new commercial out there. And it appears that they have signed up with this spaghetti group of guys who are smoking who knows what. I mean, these commercials look like somebody high wrote them. But I think that these people are sitting in a room and they're throwing spaghetti at a wall and they're seeing what sticks. So the former number one beer in America, this is their latest attempt to avoid apologizing to their former customers. So in this commercial, it stars, and I had asked the question. I was like, does anybody really recognize Travis Kelsey, Kansas City Chief tight end? Yes, he's probably a great tight end. I don't know. I don't watch football. But my question is, would anybody recognize him just from the commercial out of uniform? Because he's out of uniform in this commercial. And I'm going to play this commercial for you. There's not a lot of audio to it. Like I said, I am live in the studio. You can see the visual here. But Travis Kelsey is featured in this commercial with a bunch of grunting men. Let's take a listen. There you have it. That's the commercial there. No, like, do they think that, like, all blue collar middle class men, all they do is like that? No, it's so out of touch. This is so out of touch. It's clearly so NFL players who renew contracts notice here in the or in the commercial that he doesn't take sick beer. The reason why is because for union contract, NFL players are not allowed to appear in commercials drinking beer. And let's be honest, I mean, does anybody really know who this guy is if they were to see him out of uniform in this commercial? And plus, here's a bigger problem that I don't think anybody's really talking about nowadays. We're so focused on the Dylan Mulvaney, right? And he's an easy target because he swings around and show tunes and he wears ladies' underwear and he talks about the bulge in his pants, which is just disturbing. Okay, so that's an easy target. But nobody's talking about the bigger problem here is that Bud Light's former vice president of marketing, Alyssa, remember when she said that the Bud Light brand was too fratty and it was out of touch, and the customers, they have this kind of out of touch humor, and it's really important that we had another approach, that other approach being Dylan Mulvaney, right? But they talk about you, the customer, as being fratty and out of touch and having out of touch humor. They don't know you. And when they create ads like this is cheap pander. It just comes across as cheap pander. These campaigns don't come from a place of comedy. They come from a place of this is how little elite executives think of middle America. They think they know you. They think a bunch of men grunting and drinking beer is what you stand for. They think that's all you are. That's what these elite executives think of you. And I'll bet a free case of Bud Light after rebate that the company goes under here, and they're gonna declare bankruptcy much like the Bed Bath& and Beyond, Bed Bath& and Broke after they stop selling Mike Lindell pillows and My Pillows in their stores. Okay? I bet you a free case of Bud Light after rebate. That's what's gonna happen here, folks. And all they had to do, think about it, was say, "Oops, we messed up," and then this $20 billion problem wouldn't have been a $20 billion problem. Bud Light instead, they decided to go a million different directions, and they're choosing to do all of these pandering type commercials. And it's kind of deeply offensive. 309-451-9299. That's going to do it here for the show. Thanks so much for joining me. We'll do it again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. This is the Morning Buzz. Glenn Beck is up after me. And did y'all know, did you hear that he had a hand in that Underground Railroad operation for ending child sex trafficking? I'm sure he'll talk about it today.